Welcome to Untold, conversations with Utah business leaders about the moments that shape them and how they lead. I'm Jon Spiesman, your host, and today I'm joined by Dave Olsen, the co-founder and CEO of Nimbl. Nimbl has grown significantly from founding to over 100 people in the past 8 years, building a modern cloud-based financial services platform with a distributed team. But today, as impressive as those metrics are, we're not focused on those today. We're focusing on a more personal growth journey, how the role of leading a growing company has changed Dave along the way, and what it takes to grow into the kind of leader that your company requires. Dave, so happy you're here today.
Yeah, thanks, Jon. It's great to be here.
Great. You built Nimbl from a really deep technical foundation. CPA, had a number of different roles in accounting and business, systems-driven thinker. At what point did you realize that the role of CEO of Nimbl required something beyond the technical stuff that you knew?
Yeah, I appreciate the question because that's really core to my journey. And it's a part of the journey that I really fought for a long time. I served as a mostly solo fractional CFO for about 10 years after leaving public accounting. And during that time, I saw the opportunity and the need for small businesses to have more sophisticated accounting, finance, tax, IT, all those back office services that traditionally were done by in-house teams or just not really done at all or not done well. And so with the rise of cloud tools and virtual work, there's a huge opportunity to provide this impact to way more small businesses. But I was kind of stuck in my own head as a technician, not really seeing myself as a business leader at the time. But over time, again, seeing this opportunity to make more of an impact and feeling this kind of inner itch, this inner drive to do more and to be more. And that's what really led to that shift. That turning point for me was, I was about 10 years in, and I was meeting with a prospective client who was also an executive coach. And he ended up asking me a lot more about my life, my business, my goals than I did about his business. And he really got to the core and discovered this tension that I was facing, that I wanted to have a bigger impact, build something more, become more myself, but just didn't see myself as a leader who could do that. And I also didn't see the construct I had at the time was to build a bigger business meant sacrificing other areas of my life. And my family was important, my health was important, and I saw it as a conflict to build a business. And at one point in the conversation, he looked at me and said, "Well, why can't you have both? Why can't you build a business and have the life that you want?" And it's such a simple phrase, but I must have just been ready to hear it because it sunk deep into my soul. And that was the turning point that led me to see the possibilities differently and to kind of, it's been a multi-year journey since then to become more of a leader, but that was really the turning point for me.
Yeah, that's great. Huge insight. So, I'm curious then, you had that identity issue kind of up front, not seeing yourself as a business leader or having an inaccurate view of that. As the company began to grow, what part of leadership kind of felt the most unnatural to you? What was hardest initially?
One of the hardest things is identifying lack of performance and addressing it head on. I just assumed everyone was like me, and not that I'm any better or anything, but I assumed they thought like me or they had the same incentives that I did as a business owner. And I realized that everybody's different. Everybody has different skill sets. And I was hesitant at first to really address those things head on or even see them. I just assumed people could figure it out, or if they said they wanted it, they could be developed. And it took me a long time to realize that not everybody's right for every role, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with them. It just means an important job of leaders to find the right roles for the right people. And I resisted that for a long time. And it's been a journey to become more effective in that way.
Yeah, we usually don't change unless something hurts. Like, what was a cost that you paid to learn that lesson?
It was a very painful pattern of holding on to several team members for just way too long, and looking at the cost that had on the business, and also just the additional the payroll cost. It was just painful to see, and to see the cost on, even I'd say even more importantly, the cost on them personally, to see them struggle in a role that wasn't quite a fit. But I wasn't willing to address it. They weren't willing to make a change, and it's just a cost overall. So that happened several times over too long of a period of time before I started shifting that pattern, and I would see that it wasn't the end of the world if we make a change. That they can find a role that's better for them in a different place, and they go on with life and they're happy, and the business is better off by finding a better fit. So it was only hurting the business to hold on too long, and it really freed everyone when we made those kind of changes.
Oh, great. Yeah. So I'm curious because, you kind of referred to the fact that, if you aren't holding standards, the overall environment suffers, right?
Yeah.
Was there a moment where you felt that shift from I need to design the technical stuff to I need to design the environment?
Yeah, I don't know if there's like one period of time, but it was definitely early on in a fairly short period where I transitioned from doing the client work to putting people in place to handle clients, and then building a leadership team to be responsible for each of the major functions of the business. And this was roughly a 3-year process from the time we hired our first person in 2018 to the end of 2021. We had a leadership offsite, and I looked around and realized we have incredible leaders at the head of every function of the business, and I'm not directly involved or directly responsible for any one of these. And it was a rewarding moment to me to see just what we'd all built as a team over the last 4 years, and we'd actually that's kind of a moment where I looked and said, hey, we might have a real business here. This is kind of fun.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I was looking at LinkedIn, and I noticed you had posted about that retreat. Actually, you've posted about several things. Actually, some very insightful, I think, deep conversations that you started on LinkedIn. About the questions you've asked, boundaries that you won't cross. What are you willing to suffer for? Questions like that. I'm curious, what role does this posting or does this kind of leading out loud, what role is that playing in your leadership journey?
It's a way to stretch myself because it's not my default. I if I had my way, I would be in a back office and in front of a spreadsheet crunching numbers. That's where I'm most comfortable. But I have recognized over time it's not where I want to be. I want to grow and stretch myself more. And so, part of that stretch we've talked about is actually building a business and building a team. And then another part of that stretch is I want to be anonymous. I don't want anybody to really know who I am. That would be my comfort zone. But I realized to really make an impact and to have the world know what Nimbl can do, I need to be a voice. I need to put myself out there, take that risk, and recognize that even though it's hard for me to admit, I usually have to have other people remind me this and tell me this, that I've learned some things that might help somebody else along their journey. And putting myself out there has a dual purpose of providing that value and providing sharing those learnings with other people, while also providing visibility to Nimbl and bringing awareness to what we're doing, and hopefully we can spread our impact through that way.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's not easy. I've been posting on LinkedIn for a long time, especially the first few times you do it, hitting that publish button, right, can feel pretty heavy.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned that 2021 leadership team retreat and that insight of, hey, I'm actually leading a team here, but I'm not in charge of any single thing. At the time, did you know what role you were stepping into?
Yeah, that was actually, it was a rewarding time and a celebratory time to step back and recognize that at I guess at a macro level, but on a micro level, it was really uncomfortable for me because I didn't really know what my place was.
Mm.
I know there's lots of things to do in the business, and my tendency would be to see a problem and jump in and fix it because that's what I'd been doing for many years. And it took a lot of, and it still takes a lot of discipline and intention to not be the one jumping in and taking over because I'm recognizing that's not my role anymore. My role is to lead through my team and get, and it's not, it's not lazy. It's not not being willing to do the work. It's if I step in, I'm depriving my team a chances to step up and grow and learn and to find that fulfillment as well. So I went through I'd say multi-year period that maybe isn't even over yet where it's uncomfortable to not be in the weeds and to figure out how do I effectively lead through other people and figure out where when I was a solo fractional CFO, there's always lots to do. And it was fun and rewarding to respond to messages and to check off tasks and I just knew it had to be done. But today, the challenge is how do I make the best use of my time? I've got a large team, a relatively large team, depending on me to lead the company and set the direction. And where do I best use my time? And it's a daily, almost a battle, I would say, of I've got this day. Like, how do I leverage my time in the most effective way to move the company forward and to serve my team? So it's not nearly as clear cut as being a technician.
Yeah. I've heard this many times from especially people who are founders with some deep knowledge, right? Getting to that point of letting go of control, contributing through others, finding that difficult for one reason or another. I'm curious, have you gotten closer to? Do you understand what's the root cause for you? What makes it difficult? Is it is there something that you what's the root cause for you? Have you gotten there yet?
Yeah, it's still something I wrestle with. So I don't know if I have the best right answer for that. But there's a few things that I've looked at over time, and I think part of it is getting comfortable with the idea that inputs don't necessarily lead directly to outputs. Coming from accounting background and a technician, you do the work and you get paid for it, or you do this task and it's done. But now I can spend hours or days or weeks on things that may not have a direct, obvious result, but I have to trust that I'm doing the best I know how to do to move the company forward. And I'm going to make mistakes, and some things are going to be in hindsight a waste of time. But the only way to really know is to do it and to be in action. And so I think it's part of the discomfort is just not knowing today if what I'm doing today is really going to pan out or lead to results. And I'm such an optimizer, it's uncomfortable to think I might spend an hour that could have been a waste in hindsight. So I've learned to get more comfortable with the idea that, I might spend, many hours that in hindsight would be a waste, but I may spend 1 hour where I hit on something that's, way bigger than, a year I could have spent on anything else. So I think that's I think close to the heart of coming to terms and making peace with that role.
Yeah, that discomfort of not getting the same kind of dopamine hit of I spent an hour, I did something, I checked the box, I got something off the list, so to speak, versus I worked on strategy all day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
that dopamine hit. That's a great way to put it. It's much easier to get that immediate reward, and it doesn't happen in a leadership role.
Interesting. I'm curious, as you've kind of been on this growth journey, were there any other surprises? Was there anything that your growth exposed in you personally that you didn't expect?
Yeah, one of the most rewarding aspects of building a business has been to see the progression and development of the people that I'm leading. And I'm not surprised by that now, but it's not something I set out. Like I want to build a business because I think it's going to be so fun to develop people. I mean, I definitely wouldn't have been opposed to that, but it's not something I led with. I was thinking more in terms of making an impact on the market and serving clients and, giving people jobs, that kind of thing. But to see people catch a vision of themselves as leaders, especially as this could apply to any role, but I can specifically point to our leadership team. There have been some of the leadership team members or one in particular that I'm thinking about. He's been with us since almost the beginning. And at first he came in as a relatively low level role, didn't really see himself, kind of like me at the time, didn't really see himself as a leader. And over a few years, he's just really caught a vision of himself as just what's possible for him. And it's not only made a huge impact on the business, but it's very obviously spread to other areas of his life, his family life, his health. Just so many areas have come alive because of that vision he caught in the business. And that's just one I could point to, but there's many similar examples across the business. And to me, that's more rewarding and more important than anything else we could ever do. Like the main reason I would want to be profitable and sustainable is so that we can continue to provide these kind of opportunities to give our team to grow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. It kind of feels like I just saw you kind of light up when that topic came, and I'm kind of seeing a pattern that I want to check with you on and see if this resonates for you. It seems like each time that you were kind of at a growth turning point, that something else was needed, right, for Nimbl to keep moving. That there was a recalibration or an internal shift that happened in you first before it would propagate into the company. Is like almost the company couldn't grow past the version of you that was there at that moment, that you had to change before the company would change. Is that fair?
That's more than fair. That's spot on. The same executive coach that I mentioned that kind of sparked this shift, this pivot, I've worked with him since. And early on, that's the exact principle he helped me to see, is that the good news and the bad news is it's up to me. Like, yes, I need a team and I can't do it by myself, but I'm the enabler and I'm the limiter. And it's up to me of how fast I want to grow, and which will be how fast that the company is able to grow. And I see that as more good news than bad news because it is something I have influence over. I'm not depending on someone else or external factors. It's really up to me, and it's daunting at times, but it's also freeing to know. Yeah, I just work on myself, and that will. It's kind of the when we talk about inputs and outputs. Working on myself in one given day, I don't know what the output's going to be, but I can see clear patterns as I've progressed myself as a leader. Then it's unlocked possibility for the business. And yeah, it's not a take credit kind of thing. Like I've done it all, but it's like I have to be the leader that can stay ahead of that.
No, that's good. Yeah, I liked what you said. It's not a take credit thing. In some ways, it kind of feels like getting out of the way.
Yeah, really.
It's so on that topic. Like, I'm wondering, was there a part of your leadership that you had to unlearn, right, to get out of the way, versus things that you had to, new things you had to learn? Was there something you had to kind of unwire?
Yeah, a big part of it has been, what's the best word to describe it? Almost a tendency to fear and to be overly conservative. For whatever reason, I can point to, stories from growing up and extended family members and that kind of thing, where I've had this deep fear of financial ruin or taking risks that lead to not being able to provide for my family, and so that has contributed to going 10 years of solo and being doing well financially, but being extremely conservative in the scale and the impact that I had. And so I've had to make peace with the idea that I've got a good business and we're sustainable, and I can invest in hiring people and invest in marketing and all that, and it's not going to lead to financial ruin. And if we have setbacks and the economy goes down or whatever, that um, I as a leader and we as a team can figure it out. And we can, one framing that I've worked on intentionally is I don't need to find security. I need to learn to create my own security. And that's helped me shift my mindset to, yeah, I can create my own security as I need it. I'm not depending on outside factors to remove those risks.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Create my own security, not depend on external factors. I mean, it sounds a lot like what we were just talking about earlier about the company can't grow until I grow, right? Or I heard one time I heard somebody say it this way. They said, "Hey, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is you're the problem. The good news is you're the problem."
Yeah. Yeah, I am the only one I can have direct control over, direct influence. I can't force anyone else to change, but I can change myself.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. I'm wondering, kind of going back to that leadership retreat. So you're in 2021, having that insight at that time, right? That, yeah, you've got a real company. You're kind of, sounds like, shifting into CEO mode versus I'm an operator or manager kind of mode. And you've come a long way since then. If I were to ask that leadership team from 3 years ago, between now and then, what's changed the most about Dave and the way he leads, what would they say?
Yeah, I'd love to ask them that question. I think that'd be insightful. I think one thing they would say is I've got better at getting out of the way. Um, in the process of building a leadership team, I was heavily involved, and I would say back in 2021, I would still have a tendency to jump in where I didn't necessarily need to. And over time, I've got better at letting my team lead and, guiding, by agreement, stepping in on certain projects or helping out, but not just jumping in and taking over. And it's been a journey to fight that tendency to just want to jump in and fix things when. And part of that journey for me too is recognizing that I don't have all the answers, and that just because I think I see a better way doesn't mean that is the better way. And I've had enough experience seeing where I thought I knew the better way, but I bit my tongue and stepped back, and what happened actually ended up being better than I could have done myself. That's happened over and over again. It's helped in that process of being willing to step back more.
What would the situation look like that would make it more likely that you would step in?
And it's happened recently. I can think of one example where it was by request from a leader, where it's like, I don't have the capacity or don't feel equipped to address this situation. I'd love help. And so it's not, and I'd like to say I'd be willing to step in if I see an obvious deficiency, and I would be proactive in leading in that situation. But the ideal situation is where a leader is self-aware enough to ask for help, and then I can step in by agreement on a in a very defined role, not taking over that role permanently, and not not a permanent role in the business, but on a special project to help turn something around.
Okay. So you've kind of learned to look for permission, and then define it well, is what I'm hearing. And then that leads to you being able to give it back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here I helped out, but here it's yours.
For sure. Yeah. Yes. I'm not letting you off the hook forever, but I'm happy to help out. And I'd say that's an ideal situation, but I wouldn't wait for permission if I saw an issue. I'd also step in and coach someone on a deficiency or something that I'm seeing, and work together, partner with them to figure out how to resolve it.
Okay. Well, good. I want to be respectful of the time, but before we wrap, I have a couple questions. Like to zoom out a little bit, and I'm wondering, for if you were talking to a leader who sensed themselves at one of these inflection points that you've pointed out, what would you want them to understand about growing into the next version of themselves or a better version of themselves?
I would want to somehow open up their vision of what's possible. I think all of us have way more capacity than we can possibly see. I'd say in a way unlimited capacity if we can learn to get out of our own way and to see what's possible. And that's a key part of what I look at almost every day is like what's limiting me? What limiting beliefs or thoughts do I have, and how do I get that out of the way? Because there's just so much is possible, and just to figure out the work is to figure out what's in the way of that being possible, and methodically get those things out of the way. And I think the biggest risk and the biggest mistake is resigning to a certain state. Like, I just don't see myself as someone who can take us to the next level, or whatever that version might be for any particular person. If it sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's possible. Like, just believe, and it's obviously more than belief. There's a lot of work and intention behind it, but the starting point is just believing it's possible, and then go to work about it.
How do you cultivate that belief in somebody who has doubts in themselves?
It's a good question. I think people have to have an opening for it. They have to want to believe it. In the leaders I've worked with and in observing myself, some people just don't believe it, don't want to believe it, and don't have an opening for it. And I don't know that there's a whole lot you can do there. But if someone doesn't really believe it, but they want to believe it, and they have just even a small opening, to just kind of pry at that opening a little bit, and with some patience and encouragement, encourage them to just experiment a little bit, just to go a little bit at a time, and kind of work out of those limitations.
That's interesting. So almost help them take a step, even if they can't see where they're headed.
Yeah, if they're willing to take that step, then and work with that. I see a lot of that in myself, and the coach that I mentioned, that I didn't very clearly see a lot in myself, but I wanted to see it, and I was open to having him help me unravel and unblock what was possible.
Awesome. Fantastic. I appreciate your openness in sharing that. I think I'm sure it's going to inspire somebody who hears that, who's maybe questioning or wondering what they can become, maybe has an idea that they could become something different, but not sure what it's going to be yet. I think it'll encourage them to take the next step. So, conversations like this are exactly why Untold exists, is to make space for these leadership moments that don't always get talked about publicly. So I appreciate you being here and being so open with us today.
Yeah, happy to be here. I appreciate the invite.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.